Hi, everyone. My name is Rachel, and I'm 9 months pregnant. Honestly, I never thought I'd be sharing a story like this on the internet. I always assumed that when I became a mother, my life would be filled with love, support, and those tiny little moments people always talk about. The first kick, decorating the nursery, imagining the life ahead. But if I'm being sincere, my last few weeks have been nothing like that. They've been lonely, terrifying, and, well, sometimes I just feel invisible. Before I go any further, if you're watching this and you've ever felt overlooked or unsupported, or if you just want to hear real life stories that are raw and emotional, please hit that like button and subscribe. I promise these stories you can relate to, and sometimes they help you realize that you're not alone.
Okay, so here's what happened. It was a Friday morning, and the sun was already spilling through the blinds in our Austin, Texas home. I had just woken up, rubbing my swollen belly, trying to get comfortable in a way that's basically impossible when you're 9 months pregnant. The weird part is, I wasn't even fully awake when I heard Mark, my husband, moving around downstairs. His footsteps were quick and certain, the kind of sound you hear when someone's in a hurry, probably talking to his mom on the phone at the same time. I stumbled down the stairs, my robe barely covering me, and I saw him leaning against the kitchen counter, coffee mug in hand. He looked calm, maybe even cheerful, but there was this distance in his eyes. He wasn't really seeing me. "Morning," he said, the tone light, like he had no idea how terrified I already was. I took a deep breath, trying to calm myself before I spoke. "Mark, what's going on today?" He smiled, the kind of casual, carefree smile that makes you want to scream. "Mom called. They're heading to Dallas for Dad's birthday dinner. I was thinking of driving up tonight after work. It'll just be the weekend." I froze. My hand went instinctively to my belly. "The weekend? Mark, I'm 9 months pregnant. I've been having contractions on and off. You can't be serious, can you?" He laughed softly. Not cruelly, but like my panic was funny. "Rach, you'll be fine. You're not even in labor yet. Besides, it's just one night. You can handle it." I remember my heart dropping into my stomach. "One night? What if something happens tonight? What if I need you?" He leaned forward, kissed my forehead, and said, "Then call me. Or call an Uber. The hospital is 10 minutes away. You'll be fine." And that was it. No hesitation, no real concern, just logic, just dismissal. I wanted to scream, I wanted to beg, but all I could do was stand there, my hands shaking, trying to process the fact that the man I trusted most in the world could so casually leave me alone when I was about to bring a child into this world. Hours later, Mark left. He hugged me lightly. "I'll be back Sunday morning, promise." And just like that, he was gone. The car door shut behind him, and I watched the taillights fade down the street. My house, once warm and comforting, suddenly felt cold and enormous. Every creak of the floorboards sounded louder. Every hum of the refrigerator felt like a reminder that I was utterly alone. I tried to distract myself, folding laundry, rearranging baby things, sipping lukewarm coffee, but every little twinge in my stomach made me panic. I kept telling myself it was nothing, just practice contractions. It's normal. You'll be okay. You'll survive this. But deep down, I knew that this time, it wasn't just practice. Around 8 p.m., there was a knock on the door.
It was Mrs. Johnson, my neighbor from next door. She's probably in her 70s, soft gray curls, always smelling faintly of lavender and something delicious baking in the oven. She came in with a small plate, holding it like it was a peace offering to a war I didn't know I had started. "Evening, sweetheart," she said, her voice warm. "I made extra chicken pot pie. Thought you could use some dinner." I wanted to cry. I hadn't realized how hungry or how lonely I was until that moment. We sat together at the kitchen table. She chatted about her grandchildren, about her garden, about life in the neighborhood. And I nodded, barely responding, just trying to keep my composure. When she noticed the hospital bag by the door, she asked gently, "Is Mark working late again?" I hesitated. "He's out of town for the weekend." She raised an eyebrow. And in that quiet way older women have, she said, "On 9 months pregnant?" I nodded, trying to laugh. "Yeah, he thinks I'll be fine." Mrs. Johnson reached across the table, putting her hand over mine. "Honey, you call me if anything happens, day or night. I've been through enough deliveries to know you won't be alone." Her calm, steady presence was like a lifeline. I nodded, speechless, overwhelmed with gratitude. By midnight, I couldn't sleep. My phone kept buzzing with notifications. Mark posting pictures with his parents, smiling at a restaurant, and holding a birthday cake in front of him. He looked so happy. And yet here I was, clutching my belly on the couch, wondering if I'd survive the night alone. At first, the contractions were spaced 20 minutes apart, then 15, then 10. I sent him a text. "Hey, I think something's starting." No reply. I waited 10 minutes and tried again. Still nothing. By the third text, I wasn't sure if I was angry or terrified. My hands trembled as I grabbed the hospital bag. I tried to call an Uber, just like he had said, but my fear paralyzed me. I didn't want to go completely alone. Finally, I walked next door and knocked on Mrs. Johnson's door. She opened it immediately, alert and calm. "Is it time?" I nodded, tears spilling down my cheeks. Without a word, she grabbed her car keys, helped me into the passenger seat, and we drove to the hospital in silence. Occasionally, she reached over to squeeze my hand. "Breathe through it, honey. In through your nose, out through your mouth. You've got this." Her calm anchored me. For the first time that night, I didn't feel entirely alone. When we arrived at the hospital, she parked at the front, helped me out, and even handled the paperwork without complaint. As I walked through the automatic doors, contractions hitting harder with every step, I thought, he should have been here. Hours later, in a hospital room filled with beeping monitors, I finally saw the first flash of Mark's name on my phone. It was 6:37 a.m. "Hey, babe, I just saw your texts. Are you okay?" I didn't reply. Not yet. Because at that moment, as the sun rose over Austin and my baby's heartbeat filled the room, I realized something I never thought I would. Sometimes the people who promise to stand by you are the ones who leave first. And sometimes the people you least expect, like an older neighbor with lavender perfume, are the ones who show up when it really matters. If you've ever felt unseen, unheard, or alone during a time you needed love the most, please take a moment to like this video and subscribe. It really helps me share more real stories like this. Stories that remind us we're not alone. The first moments after giving birth were surreal. I sat in the hospital bed holding my baby for the first time, and I couldn't stop staring at him. Tiny hands, tiny feet, This little human who had been inside me for 9 months, now in my arms. It should have been the happiest moment of my life. And it was, in a way, but it was also terrifying because I realized how alone I had been and how alone I still felt. Mark still hadn't called. I checked my phone obsessively. 2 messages from him. The first one said, "Hey babe, I just saw your texts. Are you okay?" The second, an hour later, said, "Mom says to keep her updated. I'm driving back now." No, I'm sorry. No, I can't believe I wasn't there for you. Just logistics, like my fear, my labor, and my pain were minor inconveniences in his schedule. I stared at the screen until my eyes blurred. My hands shook, not from exhaustion, but from anger and disbelief. Then I looked over and saw Mrs. Johnson still sitting in the chair beside me. She had stayed, like she promised she would do, with quiet patience and unwavering support. "She's perfect," she whispered, nodding at my son. "You did a great job." I wanted to tell her everything, the panic, the fear, the heartbreak, but I couldn't speak. I just held my baby tighter and let her words wash over me. When Mark finally arrived around noon, I felt nothing. Not joy, not relief, just this cold, hollow weight in my chest. He walked in casually, tired from the drive. His shirt was wrinkled, his hair messy. He looked at me and said, softly, "Hey, you look good." Good? I had just survived hours of labor, nearly lost my mind out of fear, and he said, "You look good?" I swallowed, forcing my voice steady. "Where were you?" He blinked, like he didn't understand the question. "I left as soon as I saw your text." "Mark, that was 7 hours after I told you I was in labor. You left me alone. You left me when I needed you the most." He looked down at the floor, then at the baby in my arms. "Well, I'm here now." Those words cut deeper than anything else could. I'm here now. Like arriving late erased the hours of fear, pain, and loneliness. The nurse came in, breaking the tension. "All right, new parents, how's everyone feeling?" I wanted to say, "alone." I wanted to scream, "You weren't here when I needed you." But I didn't. I forced a small smile. "We're okay." Mark nodded, distracted, already rechecking his phone. Mrs. Johnson leaned toward me quietly. "Men sometimes don't know how to act when they're scared," she whispered. "It doesn't mean they shouldn't try." Her words made me squeeze her hand, because she understood something that Mark never did. It wasn't fear that kept him away. It was a choice. And choices have consequences. The next days were hard. Mark slipped back into his routine: work, phone calls, and occasional dinners. He told coworkers stories about how crazy the delivery was, how he almost missed it. They laughed. He laughed. But when we were alone, he avoided eye contact, almost pretending nothing had happened. I found myself doing everything on my own: feeding the baby in the middle of the night, changing diapers, cleaning up spit up and messes. He would help occasionally, but it always felt like an afterthought, as if he were doing it because he had to, not because he wanted to. One night, the baby wouldn't stop crying. I tried everything: feeding, rocking, singing softly, but nothing worked. I was exhausted, sleep-deprived. My back hurts. And Mark was on the couch, absorbed in some TV show, scrolling on his phone. "Mark, please, can you help me?" I asked, my voice cracking. He sighed, annoyed. "What do you want me to do? He only wants you." "Just hold him for 5 minutes," I begged. He shook his head. "You're overreacting. You always get worked up." Something inside me snapped. I stepped closer, gripping the baby tightly. You weren't here when I went into labor. You weren't here when I was terrified. And now you're telling me I'm overreacting? His eyes widened, and I could see the guilt flashing for a second. But then he tried to defend himself. I thought you were exaggerating. You weren't due yet. That's not an excuse, I whispered. I needed you, and you weren't there.
After that night, I started to see things more clearly. Mark wasn't a bad man exactly, but he wasn't reliable. He didn't show up when it mattered. And I realized something important. If I kept waiting for him to change, I might be waiting forever. I began relying more on myself and on people who actually cared, like Mrs. Johnson. She became my lifeline. She'd drop by with snacks, help with the baby, and sometimes just sit quietly with me when I felt like I was going to break. Her presence reminded me that support doesn't always come from where you expect it. One evening, she said something I'll never forget. Some men love the idea of family more than the work it takes to have one. The trick, Rachel, is deciding whether you'll keep waiting for him or start showing up for yourself. Her words hit me harder than anything Mark had said. I knew she was right, and for the first time, I felt a quiet, fierce determination growing inside me. Mark tried again, slowly. Little things, making bottles, folding laundry, staying home one night, but it always felt forced. And each time I caught him slipping into old habits, I realized it wasn't just about him failing once or twice. It was a pattern, a choice he made over and over. One night, I found an email draft on his laptop. It was about next year's trip to Dallas. Subject line, weekend trip, Mom's birthday. The message read, Rachel will be okay with the baby. I stared at it, and something inside me shifted. I didn't cry. I didn't yell. I just realized that I couldn't rely on him to protect me or our baby. I had to do it myself. And that realization, painful as it was, made me stronger. Days passed, and I began asserting myself in small ways, asking for help, saying no to things that didn't feel right, holding Mark accountable when he promised something. It wasn't easy. There were tears, arguments, and nights spent crying alone in the nursery. But slowly I felt the fog begin to lift. I was still exhausted and still scared, but now I also felt capable. I had survived the birth. I had survived the weekend Mark abandoned me. And I was beginning to survive the reality of being a mother to this beautiful, tiny human, on my own terms. The weeks after the birth blurred together. Feeding schedules, diaper changes, sleepless nights. It all ran together, one endless cycle. I loved my baby more than anything. But some nights I felt like I was running on fumes, carrying the weight of a life that wasn't just mine anymore. Mark was home more, yes, but it didn't feel like real support. He helped, sometimes, but always with a distracted, half-hearted energy as if he were checking boxes rather than genuinely being there. One night, the baby wouldn't stop crying. I had fed him, rocked him, walked the floor with him for hours. My back ached, my eyes burned from exhaustion, and I could feel my patience slipping. Mark, I said, my voice trembling, can you please take him for a little while? He was on the couch, phone in hand. He only wants you. You know that, he said lightly, not even looking up. I felt something snap inside me. I wanted to scream, cry, and throw things all at once. But instead, I stood there, hands trembling, holding my baby. You weren't here when I went into labor. You weren't here when I was terrified. You weren't here when I needed you most. And now you're telling me I'm overreacting? His eyes widened, guilt flashing briefly. Rachel, come on, I didn't think it would happen that fast. That's the point, I said firmly. It did happen fast, and you weren't here. I can't keep living like this. That night, something changed. I realized I wasn't just angry or disappointed. I had grown tired of waiting for him to suddenly understand what being a father and a husband actually meant. I needed action, not words. And if he wasn't going to show up consistently, I had to step up for myself and for my child. I packed a small bag, essentials for me and the baby, and drove to my sister's house. No dramatics, no yelling, just a quiet decision that my sanity and my child's well-being mattered more than anyone else's ego. When Mark saw me leaving, he panicked. "Rachel, wait, where are you going?" "I'm going to my sister's," I said, voice calm but firm. "I need space to think. I need to figure out how to survive this, because I can't keep doing it with you acting like everything's fine." He followed me to the car, pleading, "Rachel, please, don't do this. I can change. I'll be better." I looked at him, tired, frustrated, a man who finally realized the weight of his choices. And I whispered, "Then start by showing up. Every day. Not just when it's convenient." And then I drove away, feeling a strange mix of fear and liberation. At my sister's house, life slowed down. I could breathe. I could sleep a little. I could feed and care for my baby without the constant anxiety of wondering if Mark would help or abandon us again. My sister reminded me of my own strength, and the quiet support of Mrs. Johnson continued through phone calls and small visits. It was during these weeks that I realized healing isn't about revenge. It's about boundaries. It's about learning to protect yourself and the people you love most. Mark called almost every day, sometimes apologetic, sometimes desperate, sometimes quiet, just checking in. Each time, I listened. Each time, I weighed whether I wanted him back, not out of fear or guilt, but because I wanted him to earn it. Finally, one evening, I returned home. But this time, it was on my terms. The house smelled like home. Faint lavender, baby lotion, coffee. But it felt different. I felt different. Stronger. More aware of my worth. Mark greeted me cautiously. No jokes, no excuses. Just eyes that finally held a glimmer of understanding. He said, "I don't expect forgiveness, but I want to be here, really be here." I looked at him, saw the man I had loved, the man who had failed me, but also the man willing to try. Then start by showing up every day, not just when it's convenient. He nodded, tears in his eyes. "I will." I didn't know if he'd always get it right. I didn't know if he'd ever slip back into old habits, but I knew one thing for certain. I wasn't waiting for him to save me anymore. Life slowly shifted. Mark began to show up. Not perfectly, but genuinely. He started helping with bottles, bathing the baby, even taking the first shifts in the middle of the night. Sometimes I had to remind him. Sometimes he faltered. But at least now, the effort was real. And me? I had grown stronger than I thought possible. I could face sleepless nights, temper tantrums, spit-up messes, and emotional exhaustion, and still stand tall. One quiet evening, as I watched my baby sleep, I reflected on everything that had happened. The fear, the loneliness, the betrayal, and the small moments of unexpected support. And I realized something important. Life doesn't always give you the love or support you expect. Sometimes it gives you lessons. And sometimes the person who ends up saving you is yourself. I whispered softly to my sleeping child, "Someday, you'll understand what love really means. And if people fail you, that's okay. You'll already know how to stand on your own." Months passed. our routines stabilized. Mark continued to improve, not perfectly, not magically, but with a sincerity I could finally believe in. And me? I had learned to trust my own strength, my own voice, and my own instincts. Because at the end of the day, that's what motherhood is really about. It's not just feeding, bathing, or holding your child. It's standing up for yourself, setting boundaries, and teaching the next generation that self-worth matters. And sometimes, surviving the storm alone teaches you more than having someone by your side ever could.